Hall for this, our Wellingborough general election Hustings for 2024. I'm delighted to welcome you here. This event is being obviously generously hosted by our colleagues from Glamis Hall and also co-hosted by our friends from Wellingborough Group. So thank you to all friends for helping to make sure this hustings happens. We didn't manage to have a community hustings back in February when we had the by-election, so we were determined to make sure there could be something for us all within Wellingborough in terms of the election this time. My name is Marion Turner-Hawes. I'm a town councillor in Wellingborough. You might recognise my name because I did stand in the last election, in the by-election. But we have all our candidates with us tonight. And today the meeting is going to be, the event is going to be chaired by Father Ben, who is the vicar at St Mark's Church on Queensway, which is just around the corner. You'll probably recognise Father Ben from a few TV appearances that he did during the by-election, and he's aided in the chair of our meeting tonight. I'd like to, before I introduce you to all the candidates, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. So, if you'd like to use the loos, they are at the back of the room on the right-hand side, and please feel free to pop down there whenever you need to. If you'd like a drink, there's hot and cold drinks over here, and again, please feel free to pop over there and avail yourselves of those drinks. We're also doing a collection tonight to thank our friends from the Glamis Hall for letting us use the building to help them raise funds to raise the roof. We need a new flat roof, and not this roof, but the other part of the building. So if you want to make a donation, that would be gratefully received by our friends at Glamis Hall. Fire, we're not expecting any fire alarm tonight. So if there is an alarm goes off, can you make your way calmly and quickly either outside that back door there, or just here to the right there's a fire exit, and please gather in the car park at the back here of Glamis Hall floor. Okay, hopefully you might see that. Right, we are hoping to live stream tonight's event.
We are live streaming. We're live on YouTube. You can get it on the Wellingborough Eco Group's website. The same link that everybody's seen to actually get to this event tonight. It's on there. It's also across social media, Facebook, Nextdoor and Twitter.
And the hope is that after the event, for those people that weren't able to come tonight, because not everybody can, that we'll be able to see a recording of our proceedings this evening. Okay. What's the other thing? Okay. Thank you very much anyway for attending. We have questions that have been put forward by the community, and we're going to go through those tonight. Just to, before I pass on to Ben, I just want to introduce all the candidates. Firstly, with the Green Party, we have Paul Mannion, and with the Labour Party, we have Jen Kitchen. From the SDP, we have Jeremy Brittin. And from the full UK, we have Ben Habib. There are two other candidates standing as well. David Goss is standing for the Conservatives. Unfortunately, he's given his apologies for this evening. And Chris Townsend, is standing for the Liberal Democrats, and he has given us a statement to read out, which Father Ben will read after the statements from our candidates. So I'll just pass you over to Father Ben, and I hope you enjoy proceedings tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. If you can't hear at any time during proceedings, just wave, and we'll make sure we encourage the candidates or myself to speak up. It's really important that you're able to hear and be heard. We're going to begin with me inviting the candidates to just briefly make a 3-minute statement. And you've got a helpful little blurb please explain a bit about yourself, why you're standing to be our MP, and to quote Paul Baker, I think it's in the room, no flannel. What will you do to help the people of Wellingborough if you were elected? That's very helpful, thank you. So, I'll begin on my right. Not politically, I'm sure. And just yeah, please. And if you just give 3 minutes about why you're standing.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. My name is Brittin. I am. Oh, I've got the mic, sorry.
1, 2. Okay, good evening, everybody. I'll start again. My name is Brittin. I am the Social Democratic Party candidate for the Wellingborough and Rushden area. I'm honoured to be chosen by the SDP to represent the area I love and know so well. We are one of the smaller parties standing in the election. As a result, I appreciate that not everyone is going to be familiar with us and what we stand for. So just to give people an idea, the SDP were first formed in the early 80s by then disaffected Conservative and Labour politicians. We are a centre-ground party, the left on social economics, family, community, and of course, social democracy for us all is at our heart. If you want to know more about us, we recently released our manifesto. That was called Homecoming, and that can be found at sdp.org.uk should people know more about us. So back to me and local issues. I was born at the Inesbrook Hospital 61 years ago. I was brought up in nearby Higham Ferrers. I went on to raise my own family in the same town and still live in the very same home today. I worked and ran businesses for many years in Wellingborough from as far back as the early 1980s. I'm old enough to remember visiting Wellingborough Zoo as a child, which was a stone's throw away actually from Jen's office, if you remember that. There have been many changes since then. I and my family have been here to witness them and be affected by them, whether good or bad. Our small market town has grown into the large, vibrant, enriched and ethnically diverse community it is today. That welcoming Wellingborough brought me my wife for 35 years, whose mother was one of the many original Windrush generation to come to the area. I hope you agree, all of these things give me a unique understanding and perspective on just what makes Wellingborough work and tick. My heart, soul and mind is shaped by the area I wish to represent. I'm passionate about it and I promise to take that passion to Parliament if elected. Priorities for me for Wellingborough would be to ensure that the very same hospital I was born in, Inesbrook, is developed into one that is fit to comprehensively serve the 50,000 residents of Wellingborough and the other approximately 50,000 in surrounding villages. That's all I have to say for now. Thank you for listening to me. I look forward to receiving any questions you may have tonight.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming along tonight, and thank you, Father Ben, for chairing this, and Marion for inviting me. I'm flattered to be here. I just want to say I have to leave at 8:30, so if I get up at 8:30 and leave, it's not because I've been offended by anything said or incapable of holding my ground in the debate. It's simply that I have to leave. I'm in politics reluctantly. I don't want to be in politics. I'm in it because I think that the prevailing forms of government and the prevailing ideology with which we are governed is deeply dangerous for the United Kingdom. I believe that economically, culturally, democratically and constitutionally, the United Kingdom is being challenged on all fronts. Economically, if you look at the landscape, we have national debt at a post-World War II high, taxation at a post-World War II high, and rising. We have GDP flatlining, GDP per capita shrinking, in large part because of cheap, unskilled labour that we've imported from across the world. We have adopted, and I know we'll be talking about it, we've adopted this ideological obsession with getting to net zero by 2050, which is economically emasculating the United Kingdom. And whether you believe the planet is facing a climate crisis or not is academic. What you need to look at is the policy response that the governments have put forward, which is the net zero policy, a one-size-fits-all Paris Accord global policy that is deeply damaging to the United Kingdom, and I think we'll talk about that in due course. Culturally, we are being hijacked, I think, through the educational establishment. There's a move to decolonize what they call the English language. They teach our children that the wealth of this country has been made entirely, as far as I can see, what our children are taught at school, from the slave trade, that our forefathers are something of which to be ashamed. St. Paul's Cathedral had Winston Churchill down as a white supremacist, and I hold him out to be one of the greatest Britons that ever lived. And in that cultural implosion, we are losing our self-confidence as a people, and our nation-state, which turns dramatically, of course, on having a settled culture and self-confidence in ourselves, is being undermined. Democratically, we've been hollowed out by Tony Blair and David Cameron, ceding power to supranational institutions and so-called independent domestic bodies. We have a border down the Irish Sea against which I stand completely. We've got to take Northern Ireland back into the Union with Great Britain, and that's why I'm in it.
Hello, thank you very much this evening. I'm Jen Kitchen. Thank you very much for giving up your Thursday night to be part of the democratic process. You could be having dinner, you could be having a barbecue, but you're here and you're participating, so thank you very much. I was your MP for a whole 101 days. I know, very long. And it was a privilege to be your MP and to be able to represent Wellingborough on the green benches. Thank you so much for those who voted for me at the by-election to put me there. And for those of you that don't know, a little bit about me personally, professionally and politically. Well, personally, I grew up in Northamptonshire. I went to 6 schools in Northamptonshire. My parents are both naval, so I have a really big passion and interest in defence. I went to London for university. I studied politics and history. I was also a councillor in London, and then I came back as I worked in the charity sector. So a little bit about me professionally. I was a fundraiser for lots of charities, including Salvation Army, Sarcoma UK, a children's hospice, and a children's health charity as well. And while I was a councillor, I was Deputy Cabinet Member for Inclusive Economy, which is Labour speak for levelling up. In politics, obviously, I was first elected at 22. I've been part of the Labour movement for a good long while now. And I have campaigned on many issues as well. So that leads me nicely to what I've done in those 100 days. Well, I was elected on 5 pledges. One was to bang the drum for our town centres, and for that, I set up 2 town centre task forces and have worked with the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner Danielle Snow to do hotspots on Rushden and Wellingborough High Street. Number 2 is to tackle youth crime, and I've again worked with Danielle on that, but I've also brought Off the Streets Knife Crime campaign to Parliament. They've done lots of parliamentarian weed kit training, but they've also been able to talk to Yvette Cooper, who's our shadow Home Secretary, about how we prevent youth violence and how we prevent knife crime. And putting all that back in your pocket, I raised it with lots and lots of ministers around pension poverty, around the household support fund, on tackling access to healthcare. I've done a GPs roundtable where I've asked GPs what they want from me, and one of them was an urgent care centre, so I launched a petition on that. Another one was helping them get their developer money, so I started writing letters on that. And another one was making Wellingborough a better place for GPs and more exciting for GPs to come. I've also asked Rishi, thank you very much, I've also asked Rishi Sunak, his final PMQ, I'm sure, about dentists and the access to dentistry in this area. So finally, I think I'm just going to round off there and give more time back to other people. But thank you very much for inviting me tonight.
Firstly, thanks for Glamis Hall for hosting this event. It's quite nice to be here. And it's not a children's birthday party, quite a few. For the smaller parties in particular, this is vital for getting our message out. We don't have, unfortunately at the moment, the activists or the resources that the bigger parties do, so this is really important for us. Professionally, I'm a sub-post office assistant at Courier. I live in Wellingborough, just off the Kingsway. I'm standing in the shop to be learned from the Green Party. The Green Party have taken different approaches in, shall we say, the less promising seats in this election. Some are saying huge streams are possible from the establishment parties to the Greens, that they're in it to win and so forth. This isn't a slight against the Green candidates who are taking this view. I'm taking a more realistic approach here in this constituency. We've been out campaigning with the Greens in our target seats, the likes of North Herefordshire, where an enormous 40% squeeze on the cards from the Tories to the Greens requires a considerable amount of effort and resources on boots on the ground. It's years in the making, and we don't have those resources yet. But the cry goes up, I suppose. It's a wasted vote, the usual thing. Is the vote wrong? No, it isn't. There's several reasons why. Smaller parties slowly increasing their vote share can influence the establishment parties for good or ill. An obvious example is the example being UKIP. Never had more than 2 seats, and it scored more than 12% of the vote. Now we could say they weren't influential. The second point is short money. Opposition parties who get more than 1 seat and more than 150,000 votes get additional state funding. So if you've liked what you've heard from our leadership people in target seats like Carla Denny or Adrian Ramsey, these guys can get more prominent voices in Parliament and more votes the Greens get nationally. And finally, I think the key point is we're heading for a Labour government. Polls today have the Tories on 17%. So really it's about holding the next Labour government to account and keeping it honest. In just the last few months, we've seen the leadership U-turn on the 28 billion binding pledge, on restoring bankers' bonuses, on banning zero-hour contracts, on banning hire and rehire, and it goes on and on. And that's just the last few months. Never wider than Mr. Starmer's 10 pledges he was actually elected on were. So a massive part is going to be holding the next Labour government to account. And a bigger and growing Green voice alongside the 4 MPs we hope to get gives us a chance to keep the good policies that Labour do have, and we have a lot of agreement, for example, on VAT fees on private schools and so forth. We want to keep those in, and we want them to be a bit more ambitious and a bit more bold. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to read a statement from Chris Townsend from the Lib Dems, which would have been his 3-minute introduction. So you'll give me the same 3-minute warning. Okay. First of all, I want to pass on my apologies for not being there with you all tonight. Sadly, I had a pre-existing commitment agreed long before the snap election was called. Also, my thanks to Marion for organising this event and giving me the chance to have this statement read out. I'll also keep it brief. Right now, our systems are not working, not for everyone. We have had a government mired in sleaze, scandal and incompetence. Our rivers are being polluted with raw sewage. Cost of living has made day-to-day living hard for so many, and means we have a generation for whom things like house ownership and stability seem like faraway dreams. I'm not the candidate who will say that all of this will be easy to fix. I believe in being honest with you about the hard choices coming, but it is a challenge I'm up for should you choose me. I'm a pretty classical liberal. I believe that the state should support everyone to have equality of opportunity in life, the same chances. I also believe that we have to build a strong economy that can support a proper welfare system that is there to care for those who need it. We also have a responsibility to care for the world that we leave to the next generations. So how do we begin to fix all this? The Liberal Democrats are offering a fair deal in this election, as our manifesto pledge, building the homes that people need, 318,000 a year, of which 150,000 will be for social housing to begin to rebuild the stocks depleted since Thatcher's time. These must be built to the highest energy standards, with renewables coming on stream to support them, helping bring down some of these costs of living. We need a new deal for dentists and GPs to bring more of them back into NHS service, to provide the services that people need. Right now, it's impossible to find an NHS dentist in Wellingborough and Rushden. Many are going without care. We have to move closer to Europe, rebuild the relationships with our closest trading partners as the first steps towards rejoining the single market. and recover the jobs and livelihoods this extreme Brexit has cost us. Day one, I pushed for us to accept the offer of the EU for British people under 35 to be allowed to work and live in the EU freely. And we need to make polluters pay. As an example, I want to abolish Ofwat and bring in a new regulator with powers to fine water companies properly for polluting our rivers, bringing the same standards for our rivers as we do for some beaches through an expanded blue flag scheme. I hope that gives you some idea of what I'm about and my passion. Once again, I'm sorry for not being there with you, but happy for Marion to pass along my email to any who would like it. So that's from Chris Townsend, who's standing for the Liberal Democrats. So we'll move on to our first question, and the questions have been fed in through the website. This is the first one. There are significant housing challenges in our area, with more than 7,000 homes due to be built around Wellingborough in the next few years, but with few of them actually likely to be available to people on the council's housing waiting list. What will you do to make housing affordable to rent, buy and run in our area? And we'll go the reverse way, if that's okay.
Yes, well, the housing issue is obviously massive nationally and in Wellingborough. Both major parties on this issue are singing from much the same hymn sheet, in my view. They're both talking about building millions of new homes, but when you look into the detail, it's about encouraging private developers to build. Private developers have a vested interest in keeping house prices high. They make a bigger killing that way. So you need intervention in the market here, and the Greens proposal actually is what Chris just mentioned. But there is also 150,000 new social homes each year delivered by local government, as it used to be before Mrs. Thatcher came along. We'd also end the right to buy disaster for once and for all. Remember what right to buy was originally meant to be about, which was to increase home ownership among tenants. Now we find out half of those right to buy properties are being rented out in the private sector at inflated rates. So that needs to go once and for all. We've introduced rent controls which work successfully in other parts of the world, and also the threat always comes down here where landlords will sell up. We've also got a policy of buy the supply for local councils. That already kind of happens now, but it needs to be ramped up so we can get up that housing stock. Because unfortunately, if you just leave it to the market, you're going to have the same problems. The house prices won't come down. We've been doing that for decades. So it needs state intervention to get the housing, social housing stock back in place, delivered by local authorities at genuinely affordable rents. And that's the only thing I think that will really resolve the housing crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing this up. It's a huge issue that's really facing generations like mine and the generations below me. Because the youngest person on this panel, I'm also probably one of the only people that I know of my age group that's actually bought a house. So yes, we've heard it, we're looking for 1.5 million homes by the end of the 5-year parliament, which is 300,000 a year. We want to meet demand, and actually here in London where there aren't social houses by the council, you have Grand Union, you have Longhouse, and you have Greatwell. And during my time as your MP, I met with all three of them, and I fed into their 2030 and 2035 strategies about what kind of housing they would like to build and what kind of housing they've got for a demand. So Greatwell and Grand Union are looking into more elderly available housing, so things like bungalows and flats and apartments, whereas Greatwell are looking for larger builds as well that will manage the capacity for our larger families. Actually, as a Labour Party, we're looking obviously to build. We want to build our way into economic stability and into economic growth, but we also want to make sure that we're doing infrastructure at the same time. So we're infrastructure first and then building around. We also have a similar but not the same policies around buying empty homes and moving back into councils. That wouldn't work here because we don't have the social housing capabilities in the council. I'll speak up, is that better? Okay, sorry. So again, buying empty homes here wouldn't necessarily work because the councils want to set up for it, but actually giving housing associations the ability to do that is also part of the Labour manifesto. So we are hoping, in conclusion, for those that couldn't hear earlier, we're looking to meet demand by building 1.5 million homes over 5 years. I've already met with Great Wellingborough, Julian and Longhurst, who are the housing associations here locally, and we want to make sure that we've got an infrastructure first build and that we're able to buy empty homes as well. Thank you very much.
So the Labour Party says they want to build 1.5 million homes in 5 years. Liberal Democrats, I think, said 380,000 homes per year. This country has never turned out more than around 300,000 homes in any year, and that was in the post-war period when regulations were set aside in order to deal with all the difficulties that World War II had created. And the problem at the moment is one that neither the Labour Party, and certainly not the Liberal Democrats, or indeed the Conservatives will address, because what they've done progressively is make the building of housing more and more complex in terms of regulations and more expensive because of this drive, this ideological tilt towards net zero, which has two effects. The first is that all the component parts of building a house goes up dramatically because of the cost of fuel and the cost of therefore bricks and everything else that goes into a property. But also because of the requirements for heat exchangers, extra insulation, and so on. And when you have that kind of regulatory burden on the creation of a product, instead of accelerating the development of homes, what you're going to do is slow it down dramatically and push those costs up, making it even more unaffordable for people. And it is tragic that actually you go around the town centres of Rushden and Wellingborough, and there are lots of derelict property which would be repurposed, brought back into use, but they can't do it because of the regulatory burden. We need to deregulate the planning system, we need to deregulate building regs, and we need to expedite the creation of more homes. The other thing that we need to do is cut back immigration. We've had 2.5 million people net come to this country over the last 3 years. That is a level of intake for which we simply cannot build enough housing. It is not possible. And we need a holistic approach to the development of cost-effective housing and repurposing buildings that are derelict in our town centres across the United Kingdom.
Thank you. I sort of agree and concur with some of what Ben said, reference the immigration side of things that has got to be checked really. We just can't produce enough homes that quickly. What I would say is I am a big believer in getting housing sorted, social housing. There seems to be a lot of emphasis on us building houses for people to buy. I mean, really and truthfully, it shouldn't be that way. We should offer that. Yes, I wouldn't want to take away anyone's right to buy, but we certainly need more social housing. When that was done years ago, I'm old enough to remember during the 60s and 70s when council houses were first getting built en masse around here, and you know, it was a privilege for people to own them. For whatever reason, we let these estates, some of them, get a sort of bad name and get stigmatised. We really have got to change that. This, I feel, if we can do it, will help. It will give young people, I've got 3 young lads, 2 of them are in their 20s and still live at home because they can't afford to rent or buy a property. One does rent. But I think what it would do as well, if we can get this housing, more social housing locally, it will also help with less demand on the market for buying houses, which will keep that sort of evened out as well. So it's a no-brainer really. And the other thing, of course, if the council own these houses, eventually the new houses, they'll get built, they'll get paid for, and then we're into the council earning profit, which can go on to other local things like potholes and stuff like that. Okay, thank you.
Question 2 is from a Judy Robinson, and she suggests you could say just yes or no. Question 2 says, as you are all candidates connected from a political party, would you have the courage to speak against the party line if you felt it would benefit this constituency more?
Well, yeah, simple answer was yes, I would. I mean, we, the SDP party, you know, we do talk, and I think most political parties do. People have their views, and things get discussed, and if I felt that strongly about something that went against the party line, particularly as a local, local MP, I would not be afraid to speak my mind. So the answer to that is yes, I would.
I think that is an absolutely brilliant question, because what we've experienced in the United Kingdom is the dumbing down of our democracy and our parliamentarians over my lifetime. And part of the problem has been this collective responsibility that's created by being a member of a party. So when you hear Jacob Rees-Mogg and lots of other Conservative members of government talk about collective responsibility and therefore towing the party line, actually what they're saying is that there's collectively no responsibility because they're all towing the party line, and they abrogate responsibility. And I think whilst you obviously need to have certain guidelines which you follow and you should buy into when you join a party, you should be absolutely prepared to challenge those who set the policies if the policies are deeply damaging to the country. And I draw the line on the kinds of things I've been talking about, particularly on things that affect the Constitution. So I find it an absolute affront to the democratic principle and to the constitutional status of the United Kingdom that somehow the two political parties that govern this country, the Labour Party and the Conservatives, felt able to support each other in putting a border down the Irish Sea. Every single member of Parliament, if they believed in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, would have resigned their party membership at that point. So I would definitely stand up for what I believe in ahead of party principles.
Can you all hear me? Perfect. So as a politician, you can't please everyone all of the time. I think you'll see that if you look at my Facebook comments. I'm God to some people, I'm the devil to others. But we have forums where you're able to raise concerns. So you've got the Parliamentary Labour Party meetings where you hash it out in front, and I will do my utmost to make sure that anything that is Wellingborough related, Wellingborough Rushden related, Findon, Erchester, Erpenborough, Chelveston, Hyde Ferris, then actually I'm speaking on your behalf and making sure that we're raising it through the political channels. Thank you very much.
Those at the back. Yeah, I think some level of party discipline is understandable and reasonable. If you're elected on a certain platform, you're kind of obliged to vote through what is on your party manifesto. If you don't like what's in your party manifesto, for the most part, then why are you standing on it? But I think it's important where situations inevitably develop during a parliament, where the issues crop up, where you've got to be independent-minded, not just for your constituency, for the country and globally. One of the big ones was the Iraq War, where frankly you could have done with a lot more independent-minded people, rather than from both parties who towed the party line and went behind things like that. So in answer to the question, I don't think it's really a yes-no question, but yes, I would speak for the constituency. The Green Party doesn't have a whipping system in place. Obviously, we only had one MP recently, I hope to have 4. And then, yeah, you can vote on your conscience in the Green Party. Again, I think that has to be some party discipline, otherwise what's the point of it? It's not being independent.
Thank you. And question 3 comes from Wellingborough Eco Group. The climate emergency is already having major impacts across the UK and in our community. What will you do as our MP to help the people and businesses of Wellingborough start to cut their CO2 emissions and to realise the many benefits and opportunities when they start to transition to more sustainable ways of living and working? And we'll start that.
Yes, well, we in the Green Party obviously think climate emergency is of the highest priority. And I agree with the premise of the question that sadly we're already in the stage of mitigating its impacts. Clear-cut examples of that in this country, we've seen a 200% increase in vineyards in the south of England in the last 20 years, which is wonderful for UK wine producers, but problematic for things like biodiversity, crop stress, food security, water scarcity, and so on. I mean, all of the major parties seem to be peddling a false economy on the climate emergency. They've scaled back their plans on the basis of being too costly. As one example, if we retrofitted our homes years ago, we have more energy efficient homes today, cheaper bills, and of course, warmer homes. And it would have saved us more in the long run. So we need to start doing that now. It's a win-win. As well as bringing down bills, mitigating climate change, there's also the possibility of creating well-paid jobs. So the climate emergency is the utmost importance, and essentially it's about investing now to save on the costs in the future. Otherwise, it's going to spiral out of control and cost us all more. And you just have to look at the amount of flooding and so forth that's going on. It's just going to add up. Dealing with the mitigating circumstances of climate change going to end up more costly.
Thank you very much. We are where we are with the economy, and the Labour Party sees growth in this area and making sure that we have economic growth. We want to invest 28 billion a year by the end of a 10-year parliament by setting up Great British Energy, which is a state-backed company. It's not nationalisation, it's a state-backed company that will invest in green technologies. Actually, here in the East Midlands, we want to bring an extra 13,000 jobs through the green economy, and that's making things like state institutions like primary schools and secondary schools that are still owned by the local authority like Croydon's down the road, able to re-insulate their roofs, make sure that their windows are glazed, and that will bring local jobs to the area as well. We also want to have grants for individuals as well to make sure that your bills are lower, because we see that security and energy security is actually a really big problem that we've been facing through global wars that have pushed the price of gas and electricity up as well. So for us, it's looking at the economy and looking how we grow the economy through making sure that we have green policies that are pragmatic, that we can invest in, and that won't cost us partner upon.
Can I just ask, can everybody hear the candidates clearly?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
No. What do you need? It's a bit muffled. Yeah.
Maybe speak really into the mic. But before I answer that question, Jen, can you just confirm one thing for me? You said that you intend to spend £28 billion a year. So what does that mean?
We'll need to ramp it up.
Okay, so you don't know how much you will be spending extra.
We won't be able to spend 28 billion a year without pressuring the economy. We have to ramp it up. I'll say that for everyone else. Can you all hear me again? Yeah. So we will be spending 28 billion a year by the end of the 10-year parliament. We need to make sure that we are ramping up our spending in line with what we've been able to invest.
Okay, here's my answer. The United Kingdom produces less than 1% of the carbon emissions of the globe. As a polluter, we are actually very good by comparison to most people. And the one-size-fits-all drive towards net zero in 2050 is having a more dramatic effect economically on the United Kingdom, because for us to get down to the level that they wish us to get to by 2030 and 2035 is much more challenging, because we're already pretty damn good. And the ideological pursuit of net zero ahead of the economy, by the Treasury's own estimates, is going to cost 1.4 trillion. And if the Labour Party starts, that works out at about £50 billion per annum. That's pretty much what you take in corporation tax every single year going towards the green agenda. If you add another 28 billion on top of that, which Labour wants to spend, that is 78 billion a year trying to decarbonise this country, which is already reasonably good. And what we've done in the pursuit of net zero is to turn our backs on abundantly available, cheap natural gas in the North Sea, and we've got the idiotic position now where, because we can't meet our own energy needs, we're having to import liquefied natural gas from the United States that has been created through the fracking process. And the renewables can never, ever provide the energy that this country needs in order to sustain itself. We are driving the economy through the floor as a result of net zero, and we are burdening the British people with more and more cost. Yes, we want the environment to be saved, but not through net zero.
Thank you very much.
You added that to per annum.
No, she said 28 billion per annum by the end of the 10-year period.
28 plus 10 years. 28 plus 10 years is 2.8 per year.
No,
Plus
she
50.
didn't say that. Jen, what did you say?
It's 52.8.
She said she would ramp it up to 28 billion
It's
per
fine, but the
annum.
figures are wrong.
Okay,
Well, you need to listen.
we may not agree with what the candidates are saying. We may not agree with their figures.
I
You need to
clarify.
listen to what they're saying. If you want to speak to them afterwards or get in touch with them, please do. We're here to listen to the different candidates and to hear what they're saying. Okay. Thank you very much.
Jeremy, you're free.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to keep it short, folks, because I think that the question is posed more on the other people on the panel talk facts, figures, numbers. Broadly speaking, obviously, we totally agree. We do need to recycle. We do need to meet our targets. So I'm not going to expand on that, but just to say, for us, one of our unique policies is we want to back local farmers to farm again, and we would also, our suggestion is with that, is that we subsidise, that we help them, but they do give over their land so we can actually start growing many more trees, which will obviously help absorb the carbon. So I'm going to keep it brief because a lot has been said on that, and so that's me. Thank you.
Okay, the fourth question. Disabled people and families have been badly hit over the past 14 years, with many falling into poverty and others losing their lives. What would you do to make financial support to help disabled people fairer and easier to access, and to help disabled people fully participate and contribute in our society through paid work?
Okay, thank you. Well, this is a subject that really is quite close to me. I have a son who suffers with epilepsy, and as a result, does struggle to, for obvious reasons, hold down work. It's the same thing. He'll go for an interview, he'll try to get a job. He has to state about his epilepsy, and funnily enough, he doesn't get the second interview. This also has got a knock-on effect for disabled people. Not only obviously have they're challenged with their disabilities, but it can also lead, like in my son's case, to depression, which is counterproductive. So I would be fully behind supporting disabled people and people with mental issues to access all areas. It's quite surprising as well. My mother-in-law has recently had to start using a wheelchair, and getting around and just realising that accessing in some places is near on impossible. So there's much more we can do, and I can say if I was elected as your candidate, I would have those things at heart, and I would champion them for us in this local area. Thank you.
So at Reform UK, we believe fundamentally in equal opportunities for everyone, not equal outcomes, but equal opportunities. And too much of government policy has been driven towards equal outcomes. And in equal opportunities, obviously, disabled people have to have the ability, as much as is humanly possible, given whatever their respective disability is, to apply for jobs, gain jobs, hold down those jobs, and earn a fair wage doing those jobs. And there are two principal factors which I think need to be borne in mind. The first is we can do a lot more for disabled people if we have a vibrant economy. It's vital. A vibrant, growing economy underpins everything, which is, I don't want to bang on about net zero or high taxation, state intervention and all of that, but if you're in a very highly regulated, highly taxed environment where energy is very expensive, you can't have a viable economy, you therefore will not have the money available in order to support disabled people. That's the first thing. The second thing is, we are living in an age of technology, which is terrific, and we need to encourage more investment in technology, because through technology, a lot of the disabilities and impediments that people face when they have got disabilities can be overcome. And prosperity combined with technology, research, development, all of which requires a holistically viable and vibrant economy, is the answer.
Thank you. This is a really, really important issue. And as I have been speaking to people on the doors and going and working with local disability action groups, there are things that are coming up time and time again. Do I need to speak up? Sorry. So there are things that are coming up time and time again. So part of the Labour Party manifesto is to review the work capability assessments. That has been hampering people that are disabled, maybe getting their PIP and getting universal credit. So we're putting a review in place. But also making sure that the NHS waiting lists are cut. A lot of people are waiting for doctors' notes and doctors' letters so that they can go through the work capability assessment. So we have a pledge to make sure that we cut those waiting lists. We also want to get people back into work and meaningful work, and to do that we need to make sure that people are skilled. We also need to make sure that the work that we're offering them is available and for their skill set as well. Part of our whole packages is that we want to have community mental health hubs, which means that if people are out of work and are disabled, they actually have the access that they need for community mental health hubs, so they're able to get themselves into a mental health space where they can go and access and be full participants in society. We also have, we want to launch a disability pay gap. So a bit like the gender pay gap, we want to make sure that companies that are employing disabled people are paying them what they're worth, so a disability pay gap as well. And I've been working closely with local action groups, particularly Northland Send Action Group, to make sure that they are getting the EHCP plans for children that have neurodiversity and neurodisabilities as well. Thank you very much.
On this, the Green Party has had a range of policies, and the flagship policy for quite a long time has been the idea of the universal basic income. We have a myriad at the moment of different benefits and so forth, which are means tested, bureaucratic and complicated. Universal basic income has been tested elsewhere in the world, and the trials are really positive because you put money in the pockets of people who badly need it, they spend it out in the economy. Beyond that, we're for reviewing and raising the personal independence payment and employment support allowance amounts to ensure they meet needs. It's also important around accessible employment and promoting inclusive workplaces, giving grants to businesses for making necessary adjustments and ensuring all recruitment processes are fully accessible. And support services are vital as well, helping disabled people find and maintain suitable employment. And then housing and infrastructure, ensuring that housing and public infrastructure are accessible for all. Over the years that has improved a lot, but there's more that can be done. We could be enforcing stricter accessibility standards for new buildings, for example. So the Green Party has a range of policies here to make life easier and more fulfilled for disabled people.
Thank you. The fifth question is from John Gilead. Kettering Energy Park is a major project currently in the planning stage where massive warehouses will be built between Findon and Burton Latimer. This development would have major effects on the residents of Findon. In my opinion, Northamptonshire has sufficient warehouses. Will you oppose the building of Kettering Energy Park? And if you think it should go ahead, please explain why it is needed.
So Kettering Energy Park, I have met with the key campaigners for the Landscapes Not Industrial Estates campaign, and when they outlined all of the reasons why they were against it, I asked for them to send me through the traffic management plan that they had A, received when the initial planning application went in, and B, what they had also analysed with an independent analyst. I was supposed to be meeting with the developers today to put those concerns ahead, but unfortunately the general election has got in the way and they are hedging their bets as well. So, at some point, hopefully, if I am your MP, I will be meeting with the developers to show them the mitigated transport plans that have been put into effect by the campaigners, but also I want to raise the concerns that have already been raised to me through Farndon. But this is a business development, and I'm not going to be telling a private company what they can or can't do with business. If they think that there is a business case for it, it is up to them to waste their money if there isn't. So what I will be doing is taking the concerns from residents and making sure that the developers are amply clear about what the residents from Farndon want, which is traffic management, which is making sure that the roads are well paved, but it's also making sure that there aren't the high HGVs and highways going through the town as well. Thank you very much.
We in the Northants Green Party have long opposed these plans. There's a range of issues with it. One thing is it's on agricultural land. It's not prime agricultural land, but it is established agricultural land which applies to the local Weetabix factory. They haven't outlined as well on various issues how the warehousing, will it just be funded? It seems like greenwash essentially. It isn't going to be funded by renewables. There was a long, extensive objection put in by the Northants Green Party. If anyone wants the details of that, I can send it to them. But yes, the straightforward answer, as was implied in the question, does Northamptonshire have enough warehousing? Yes, it does. I think you need to get over a very high bar. They're going to use established agricultural land for a project like this, and I don't think it meets that bar. Thank you.
Yeah, so I would conduct a review. First of all, the predisposition would be to welcome business to the constituency, obviously, to provoke business in the constituency. But what I would like to review is whether or not there are brownfield sites that could equally accommodate this development, whether there are existing sheds that could be redeployed in order to give effect to the business needs of these operators. Just one thing I want to say, by the way, the carbon emissions of building a new building, just the process of building a new building, is the equivalent of between 30 and 50 years worth of carbon emissions on repurposing a building, which is why it's so important to repurpose not just warehouses, but also properties that already exist in town centres and so on, rather than tearing up green fields. I completely agree that we should be protecting our green fields as much as possible. I also agree with Jen that we should be looking at the highway implications. But I would like to assess whether, I wouldn't want to turn my back on business. I'd like to welcome business as much as possible, but see if there's a way of accommodating them in a way that's more ecologically and environmentally friendly.
Okay, I'll get straight to the point. I definitely would oppose it. I do think on more than one level. The people find, and I've been on the doorstep and got feedback from them. They've come up with their reasons. It goes against the SPP's policy of farming as well. One thing I mentioned earlier. We've got agricultural land. We want to get Northamptonshire farming again on there, and we do want to support the farmers. And do we need any more warehouses? No, definitely not. And, it's all very well having warehouses full of stuff that's made abroad and is sitting in it. We want to encourage local industry and support it on all the many estates we have around Wellingborough. But we want to start getting those businesses to produce and make real things that we can sell abroad to help grow the economy. And that's the way that we can do it. Our import-export is, I don't know, I haven't got the exact figures, I'm not going to blind you with the figures, but let's face it, we do not export enough. So for that reason, I'm against it. I feel it's the wrong business for the area. If there is going to be a business there, I would rather, and don't forget, this is pretty large. I've been told it's the size of 550 football pitches or whatever. So we're talking a big development here. If we were going to develop that, I would want to see businesses on it that are production businesses that make something that we can sell abroad and, as I say, improve and build our economy.
Thank you. Are you all clear where the candidates stand on that? Question 6 is, how does your party intend to grow the economy if you are not prepared to build closer ties with our European neighbours? Please explain your plan. We'll start with Ben.
Great. Well, I mean, the European model of business is fundamentally flawed. It's a highly interventionist, highly taxed principle of business. That's what the European model is. It's essentially socialist. And what we need to do in the United Kingdom is take advantage of the Brexit freedoms that we should have done, which is to deregulate, to go back to a more flexible, permissive Anglo-Saxon way of doing business. And the great shame about the 2 treaties that Boris Johnson signed with the European Union, not that it's an extreme hard Brexit as people describe it, actually that we didn't get Brexit. We've hitched ourselves to the European Union in matters of state aid law, environmental law, including net zero, so now that's baked into international law, competition law, employment law. All these areas need to be made to fit the UK's needs, not the European Union's needs. And if you look at the economy in Europe, it is absolutely tanking at the moment. People keep talking about the difficulties we're facing. Germany's economy is facing an existential crisis. What we need to do, and what Reform UK will do, is look at what our needs are in the United Kingdom and make policies for our needs, including all the reductions in taxes, which I so wholeheartedly recommend to you in our contract with the people. Please read it on our website, and the deregulation that we promote.
Thank you, Ben. I concur with what Ben says there. The SDP were one of the few parties that actually believed in Brexit and stood for Brexit. And I do think it's about time we started sort of pulling those levers we've got and getting this country back on its feet. I did mention it, funnily enough, at the end when I was talking about the farming. We really do need to start getting production business going in this country again. I mean, local people will remember that this area was built on the shoe trade, and that actually, it gave jobs to thousands of people in the county, and also the spin-off businesses from that. We had all the engineering businesses, all those other businesses. Successive governments, whether they be Labour or Conservative, seem to have ditched the idea that we should have industry in this country. And it's a real shame, because obviously it makes us richer as a country, that gives us more money to spend on all the things we've talked about tonight. I think it's really important. The SDP will get behind business, but certain businesses that we, as I say, we actually produce something and we are selling it, and so making our country richer. It just makes sense, really. And that's what we're all about, common sense for the common good in this country.
Thank you very much. So across Wellingborough, I've been speaking to local businesses, whether that's the Wine Chateau on the High Street, whether that's Property Composites on Denington Estate, who, by the way, is the #1 manufacturer of luxury car bodies. Did you know that? Yes. It's crazy that we have McLarens and Porsches made here in Wellingborough. But we've also been talking to businesses like Scott Bader, who actually really need closer ties to Europe because they need to be able to trade across the borders. They're having tariffs that mean that these McLarens that are being made in Wellingborough, we can't actually ship them over to Germany anymore because of the red tape that's come up because of Brexit. Now, this is not me advocating for a second referendum. That's not what's happening. This is me just saying that we need to be closer to Europe to make sure that our trading deficit is mitigated against. But nevertheless, the Labour Party want to invest in the UK. We want to show that the government actually supports the UK, that we want to invest in infrastructure and house building and build our way out of the economy. If the government has strong investment in the UK, private businesses will follow. We've had austerity, we've had funding cut from local public services, which means that people haven't invested along with us. So yes, we do need closer ties to Europe because we need to make sure that our businesses that are here in Wellingborough are supported as they export and import. But we also need to make sure that we are building and investing in a stronger economy.
premise of the question, because this obsession with economic growth, above all, is what's destroying the planet, and indeed the basis of everything. Exponential economic growth on a planet of finite resources is obviously not sustainable. I think the other aspect is, it's clear in the global north, in the richer countries, that economic growth in reality doesn't have that much impact on well-being. And this kind of stands to reason, like, was your world rocked by the latest smartphone upgrade? Was your world rocked by increasing your TV size? Whereas in the global south, economic growth means real improvement in your life. So the Green Party would scrap GDP growth as a measure of progress, because it's, I think, irrelevant in the already wealthy countries. On the question of UK-EU relations, I think essentially the matter is settled. I don't think, as if it was a divorce, it was a particularly messy divorce, and then the party who initiated the divorce kind of go back and try to get something out of it. I don't think it's going to go down very well. It kind of misses out what's been happening in the EU and the direction the EU has been going in. It's going in a very populist right direction, it's going in a very protectionist direction. I don't think they're going to want EU competition. Labour want a new veterinary deal with the EU. I think that'll go, the EU will essentially say, yes, we'll put that into committee and we'll see you in about 10 years. I think the matter's settled. The chance to impact the chance to impact the Brexit was between 2016 and 2019, and we missed that chance through messing around. Parliament essentially missed the chance to influence it, and so that's why we ended up with what we ended up with.
Question 7. An NHS urgent care centre has been mentioned many times by our elected representatives over the past 20 years, but nothing has happened about it. Please explain whether you think Wellingborough should have an urgent care centre, and if so, what you intend to do to make it happen.
Thank you very much. So yes, as your sitting MP and now Labour candidate, an urgent care centre at Icebrook is very definitely needed. As we take the opportunity as a general election, when it comes, we might as well use it to make sure that we're out on the doors and we're getting signatures for a petition to an urgent care centre. So should I be your MP, then one of the first things I will do once I'm re-sworn in again is to deliver this petition. We've got almost 1,000 signatures now as we've been out on the doors. If you'd like to sign it, I'm sure we have some in the car park, and I'm more than happy for you to sign it as well. An urgent care centre is very definitely needed here. We are the largest constituency within Northamptonshire, and we do not have an urgent medical centre here. People have to go to Northampton, Corby, Kettering, and if you're in the bottom of Rushden, you might even go to Bedford, which means you're going out of the borough and out of services. So yes, we definitely do need an urgent care centre. The reason I'm advocating for an urgent care centre over an A&E centre is because an urgent care centre means that you can walk in with minor wounds and injuries, An A&E centre means that it will be ambulance priority. So what we're asking for is an urgent care centre, and what I'm asking for is for the government to recognise that there's a health crisis here and that the ICB needs extra funding to make that urgent care centre a necessity. Thank you very much.
I think on this is the perfect example about how much the debate has transformed in the last few years. At the 2019 general election, you'll remember the Tories were promising 40 new hospitals. Mr. Bone was heavily implying that Wellingborough or somewhere nearby was going to be in the mix for that. Now we know later on it's turned out that the new hospitals includes upgrades, and so the talk now is upgrading better in general. So I think in this classic case where we've got to get the investment in that we need, it can't be sort of skirting around the edges. The trick of the last few years should have been holding the Tories to account on this. Where are the 14 hospitals? Unfortunately, Labour have gone down the road of saying, sounding very much like George Osborne from 2010, we can't do much because there's no money left. Actually, there's an enormous amount of wealth in our country. Over the last half century, we've seen enormous inequality grow. It's more like less like trickle-down economics, more like over-up economics. An enormous amount of wealth at the top of society. The Green Party's policy to fund the NHS, an enormous package, is a 1% wealth tax on assets above 10 million. Now, you've got to remember, net return on assets in this country is about 3 or 4%. So we're not actually dragging the very richest down. What we're saying is that they'll get richer a bit slower and they'll be able to contribute to the common weal of the country, which we desperately need, not just with regards to NHS, but you see it in terms of infrastructure everywhere. I think that's why Jen has ended up, unfortunately, in a pothole, because she's been told out time and time again. There's all sorts of issues with our infrastructure, and it needs investment ultimately, and that's why the Green Party are asking for a redistribution of wealth so we can get that done.
So, just to reiterate, if you have a vibrant economy and the government finances in good shape, you can do a lot more than you would otherwise be able to do. And of course, we don't have a vibrant economy, in part because of all the policies that we're pursuing that we've described before. So, Reform UK would cut back immigration, that would let wages rise, and what we would tilt towards is ensuring that the frontline staff in the NHS, not just for the creation of an emergent A&E or an urgent centre, but generally, frontline staff in the NHS were promoted into work. And the policies that we've got for that are a reduction, a complete forgiveness of the basic rate of tax for all frontline staff in the NHS for 3 years while we bring the waiting list down, a removal of the cap for the training of medics and nurses and doctors at university, for the forgiveness of student debt if, having trained as a medic, they work in the NHS for at least up to 10 years. And if we can stop the outflow, and by the way, 15 to 20,000 doctors leave the UK each year because the salaries paid here are much lower than what they can get in Australia and Canada, where their qualifications can easily be used. They're leaving, and what we need to do is ensure that we have a vibrant economy here, taxes are low enough to retain those people and bring more people into frontline staff. Then we can do the A&E, we can do everything else that we wish to do with the NHS.
Thank you. As I said at the start of my introduction, I was actually born at Iceberg Hospital in 1963. Various family members have spent time there. A friend of mine recently came out of there after being rehabilitated after a long illness. So they do fantastic work there. And let's face it, the area deserves better. We've got 100,000 people in this constituency, and they really do deserve a better hospital and better services. So yes, I'm fully behind that, and I would do my utmost to make sure that happens. But what I did want to say on this whole system, frankly, I sit at home, like you guys, and I kind of get a little bit fed up with the various political parties to using this as a political football, figures here, so many billion here. Let's face it, you know, we really, I think, need to have a complete change on this. I think we should take the politics out of the NHS completely. I actually also think that we should go to the nation and we should say, we should have a referendum and say just what kind of National Health Service would you like? So do we have it as, you know, intended, free at point? Do we have a hybrid version of that? Or do we allow some of it to go private? Being a social democrat, I believe in you all having a say in things, and I think we should establish that first. And then further think what we should do is, rather than, you know, the various political parties getting in for, say, 4 or 5 years, promising the earth, not being able to deliver it, we should set up a permanent, almost like a semi-government, that actually is represented by all the parties that are in there, and also as well have specialists within it, and they decide and make a decision on how much they need for the budget. It's the only way. We've got to stop this political football of the NHS, and we've got to get on with what really needs doing and to rebuild it and make it fit for the purpose for us nationally as well as locally. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question I'd like to add some context to, because the stepdad of this young lad is in the audience, and we laid the young lad to rest on Saturday. Sadly, very recently, a young man who lived locally to here tragically lost his life in the river in Wellingborough. It's easy for people and authorities to become complacent about waterway safety. What would you do to help improve safety across all waterways in the town to prevent further tragedies from happening to other families like this one?
Well, I'm obviously really desperately sorry to hear that, and it is such a shame. I mean, we do have some wonderful, waterways and the river there around here. I personally enjoy it myself. I'm a Glamis fisherman, but I mean, what has happened is absolutely tragic. I mean, there's lots you can do. I mean, I think there are points where I know people do tend to. I mean, in Hyde Ferris Drive, you can say we have a lock. And I know that you do get gatherings of youths and that down there, and they're swimming and stuff like that. I mean, obviously, people can't have their eyes everywhere, but I think that really it probably should start in schools by, us actually getting the message over to people that, you get, whether you're a good swimmer, a non-swimmer, whatever, the river and the deep waters can actually be, and I know this from being a canoeist, they can actually be, whether you're a good swimmer or not, they are very hazardous, the whirlpools, stuff like that. I think it's just about educating people, getting the message out there. I mean, that sadly is all we can do. I'm very sorry, I didn't know this question was coming, and I don't know the background as to how and why this happened, but I can only offer my sincere condolences and just, as I say, hope we can just, educate people, maybe through the school system, etc. And, maybe we could, the councils could send out a reminder, to us all about that. So, sorry to hear that. And that's what I've got to say. Thank you.
I'd just like to reiterate my condolences. I mean, that's awful for someone to lose their life, particularly a young person in those circumstances. Of course, there are things we can do. Education is clearly at the heart of it. My experience is that most people, I don't have the stats to hand, but most people who get into difficulty in rivers aren't in difficulty because they went for a swim. It's because they end up in the river inadvertently. And so I think a lot of hedgerow management is required. I know this sounds kind of simple, but you need to know where the river starts and where the land ends. And often that's not clear because of the way, hedgerows grow. And I know that from my own fishing experience. I've slipped into many rivers inadvertently. And again, if the district council, the borough council has money, if it's rich, if we're economically prosperous, we can cut back hedgerows, we can put in signs at dangerous points, and we can warn people about the difficulties that they might face if they get stuck. The difficulty, and I'm going to digress slightly, I don't know if you've experienced this, but it's terribly hard to drive around Wellingborough and Rushden because you've got hedgerows that are completely out of control on roundabouts and on junctions, and that is a symptom of a district council that has effectively run out of money.
30 seconds.
And we need to be, it all comes back to it, we need to be a prosperous economy.
So, firstly, like many of the candidates, I echo my condolences and sympathies to the father. When I met you at the Queensway Festival, I made you a commitment that I would work. You're having trouble hearing, sorry. So when I met the family at the Queensway Festival, I made a commitment to working with the family to ensure river and swimming safety. I want to work with local authorities and community groups to fundraise for life rings along the embankment because it's a popular swimming area and actually it was a Victorian swimming area, but we now have not only polluted waters down there, but we have an undercurrent which isn't very well known about. I also would like to work with the Canal and Rivers Trust to help promote swimming and safe swimming within the Lebanon and down by the embankment. As I said earlier, for those that didn't hear, for those that my condolences and my sympathies go out to the family, I can understand it's an incredibly difficult time. When you're ready to come and work on something more public, I'd be more than welcome, and I'm really more than happy to help champion your cause.
Thank you.
youngsters, especially all sorts of those things like that, the dangers of it, as James mentioned about undercurrents. I'd also include the point about investment in our waterways and safety-wise. Green Party wants to get our waterways back into public ownership. We just don't think they're well maintained enough. Again, pollution was mentioned. And again, the water companies have taken on massive debts. They've paid out enormous amounts in dividends. And we're just not getting the investment that we need in safety and in everything in terms of improving our waterways. So yeah, that'd be the key point for us, how we can improve it. You've got to invest in things, and like a lot of things, safety has been run down. So that would be the Green Party approach to that.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Wendy Steele. Should you be elected, what might be done to help reduce the increasing number of rough sleepers that we find in Wellingborough, the related high incidence of addiction and mental illness, and the lack of safe and affordable accommodation and shelter in our area?
Yeah, thank you. Again, I think a lot of this comes back to housing affordability. You've seen rents just go through the roof, and 14 years of the Tories, benefits of the flatline. So people get themselves into trouble, then they're on the streets, and then it's a struggle. So one of our big things is a housing first model, which prioritises providing permanent housing to people. I mean, it seems an obvious solution, get the chance to give people housing, get a chance to, permanent residence. We've also got our universal credit scheme here, would allow people to get themselves back on their feet. And so it's about tackling the root causes of homelessness. Also alongside this, strengthening tenants' rights, ending no-fault evictions. And then, as we've said, it would also be around local authority support, increasing funding to local councils, community-led initiatives. It works in other countries. If you put housing first, funny enough, people get back on their feet, and if they're given the opportunity to do so. With this country, unfortunately, it seems to be we have such an issue with housing. People slip through the cracks, and the bureaucratic hoops you have to jump through. I mean, it's very difficult to get yourself out of that situation.
30 seconds.
Homelessness is a problem that's faced nationally, but it's a symptom of when the state cuts back. I used to work for the Salvation Army, and one of my first projects was a £1.2 million homeless shelter rebuild project in East London. And I know from experience that actually you need a wraparound service, so you need to be able to get people back into work, you need to be able to sever people from the addictions that they're holding, and you need to be able to make sure that they're educated on their own personal circumstances. So we did an incredible project called Recycles, which is where we taught people how to fix bikes while creating homes out of shipping containers, and it was a year-long programme that was a rehabilitation service as well. What we want to do nationally here is we want to make sure that we have a real role for community mental health hubs. And a lot of homelessness stems, it's a symptom of people that are suffering with severe mental health and depression and anxiety. Making sure that mental health is at the forefront of our NHS, and making sure that people get the community help that they need to make sure that they're back on track and can safely enter into work. We also want to do a lot more on our Back into Work programmes to make sure that people are well skilled and able to enter the future jobs. And we also, quite simply, need to build housing. None of this, you can't be homeless if there's enough housing. So thank you very much.
So one of the things I did during the by-election was visit the Daylight Centre, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. The Daylight Centre provides a fantastic service for those who are sleeping rough and are effectively homeless. But one thing I learned, which has absolutely horrified me, was that in order to gain government grants, if you are a rough sleeper, you're prohibited. Or if you do sleep, if you find a place to sleep, you may lose your right to those grants. You're not prohibited from finding a place to sleep, but you're prejudiced against finding a place, a roof over your head for the odd night, because it could undermine your ability to get those grants. That's a law that clearly needs to be reversed. The other thing that I learned, which is absolutely staggering, is that the Daylight Centre spends £636. It's all it can afford, it does a great job. But £636 per head, per rough sleeper, per year. And we are spending £50,000 per head, per annum, for every illegal migrant that enters the country. They come in, they're put in a 4-star hotel, they're free to come and go as they please, they get medical treatment, dental care, cash in their pockets, iPads, translators. It's an absolute affront to the British people that we look after those who've entered the country illegally, over and above and to the detriment of our own. And it's not just homeless people that are prejudiced against, our veterans had our backs turned on them. And then lastly, it comes back to the economy again. It's all about the economy. If we have a vibrant economy and the government is rich, we can do what we need to do to save our own.
The reason people become homeless can be quite varied, but I think it normally does have one major bearing. A lot of it is to do with mental health. I seem to remember the Tories promising us they were going to tackle mental health and make it a priority. That doesn't seem to have happened. Again, I can attest to that. I have a son that does suffer with mental health issues, and practically him trying to get an appointment to see anybody that's going to make any real difference is basically non-existent. You know, he's been waiting forever. I mean, he does get a chance, gets a little bit of counselling from voluntary workers, but actually getting the real help that he needs, it's non-existent. Luckily, he's got the support of a family, and we look after him, but not everybody's so lucky. And, you know, it's so easy to see where this could go. It does lead me though to one thing. I think, and you know, drugs was mentioned, addictions and things like that. I mean, that can come about as a result of that, depression, etc. But you know, sometimes people get involved with drugs recreationally, and you know, that can, in itself, that addiction can take them on a downward spiral. So we do have to look at it carefully. One of the things the SDP hold close to its heart is, and you know, it doesn't seem to get talked about now, and that is family values. And it's something we really believe in, the way you bring your children up. We do feel it's better in a home where there's two parents there, and to that end we're offering tax breaks for married couples. So I do think, you know, something can be learned from that as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. This question is from Elaine Fowler. Will you commit to pressing for fair and fast compensation in the next Parliament if you're elected? Thousands of WASPy women born in the 1950s, affected when successive governments failed to notify us of changes to the state pension age, plunging many into poverty. So will you commit to compensation?
Yes, definitely I would. I think that whole affair is just absolutely reprehensible. And, you know, I can give another example to do with a family. It's a slightly different subject, but it's the same thing. It's government related. One of my sons, 3-4 years ago now, was viciously attacked and nearly lost his life. Luckily, the police apprehended the perpetrator. He went to court and he was jailed. And the Criminal Injuries Board, the person involved that actually perpetrated it, was halfway through his prison sentence before my son got anything from the Criminal Injuries Board for this attack. So, although it's not the same thing, the idea of that, there is obviously an issue with the government dragging their heels over this and many other things. Let's not get on to the post office thing either as well. But yes, my answer to that question is yes, I would fully support that.
So the reason the government raised the pension age is because the government's out of cash. And it's yet another symptom of a broken economy. And I know I keep coming coming back to the economy, forgive me for that, but actually that's a critical component of our welfare. Obviously it's a critical component of our welfare. I completely understand the anger of the WASPy women who were brought up with a social contract that promised them a certain retirement age. And when they got to that point, the government changed the rules without their agreement. And it's not the first time the government's done it. Successive governments have changed agreements without people having a say in what it is that they're changing. Including changing tax rates, for example, that they promised they wouldn't change. The Labour Party promised not to increase income tax. We'll see how that plays out in the next 5 years, assuming they come into government, which I imagine they will. But I support wholeheartedly the principle that a social contract made by the state with the people needs to be honoured, because if you cannot rely on the state fulfilling its promises, you can't go forward with self-confidence as a British citizen. So I would support the case for the WASPies. I think there's a court case going through the High Court at the moment, and it'll be interesting to see how that is adjudicated.
Thank you very much. The WASPy Women campaign here locally in Northamptonshire is very, very well organised. And so much so that I think I've already emailed quite a few people about it. We are committed to implementing the majority of the review's recommendations, and we've committed that any future changes to pensions will have to be communicated well in advance. We understand that as a Labour Party nationally, it has affected so many people, and it has been a heartache and has left people in poverty, which is why we are also waiting for the High Court review, but we are also making sure that we implement the majority of the recommendations reviews as well.
On this is Green Party policy to compensate WASPy women on this case. And I think what's also key here is that we're for the introduction of a citizen's pension. So you don't have people slipping through the net in this way. At the moment, you have a contribution scheme. Many women don't get full state pension or they get a reduced state pension. Many of these people are taking time out of work to care for families or bring up children. This is before you can top up your contributions. So we want to see that resolved so that everyone gets a decent retirement. And at this point about, again, coming back to economic growth, the obsession with economic growth, I mean, to the extent we've had it over the last half century, it's overwhelmingly been poorly distributed towards the top end. So again, we wouldn't have to have these enormous pension rises and constantly sort of rationing out things. If we had a more rational economic system, there would proper redistribution of wealth. The country has enormous wealth, frankly. A lot of it already hoarded overseas, plenty of it still here. And the Green Party wants to actually redistribute wealth. I know it's an unfashionable thing these days, a few parties actually saying it, but I think that's what we can do, and that will resolve this issue of pensions. And we could then afford as well compensation for the WASPy women.
At this point, Ben Habib is going to leave, as he said he would. Thank you. Thanks for attending. We'll press on, if that's okay with you. We've got 2 scripted questions left, and then if anyone has got a burning question, we'd really love to invite you to give it. Question 11. Wellingborough has an above average number of low-skilled, low-paid jobs. What will you do locally as our MP to work to enable many more high-skilled, higher-paid jobs to be created in our area without destroying our natural environment and heritage at the same time?
Well, I did touch on this slightly before. We do definitely, that is what we definitely need. We need to get serious about industry, high-skilled jobs, and I know a lot of that, and I won't bore you with our manifesto, you'll read it yourselves, but we also would be to build a company nationally to take advantage of the green technology, etc. Yes, that's one part of it, but there's all kinds of other traditional businesses, and manufacturing jobs that we've just decided, you know, or say we've just decided, past governments have decided that we just don't want to do them anymore. Hence, going back to my example of the shoe trade, I mean, the reason that all finished was not because of the shoe factories decided we'd had enough. It's just successive governments really didn't back them, didn't make it or help to make it affordable for them to make their products, export them. So we've got to get serious about it again, and we've got to change. I do believe we've got to start building businesses. I know that the hot topic is the green industries, and I know Labour make a big thing about that, and which is fair enough. We do agree with that. But you know, for instance, you know, things have to be made. I'm looking at my phone now. You know, the case is metal. You know, where was that made? You know, more than likely abroad, more than likely China. Why can't we build them here? You know, and you know, all those jobs, all those manufacturing industries, 30 seconds, you know, are very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We as the Labour Party are committed down breaking barriers to opportunity. So that includes things like lifelong learning loans, making sure that it's easier to go back to skills colleges, technical colleges and university. We also want to reevaluate the apprenticeship levy, making it easier for large corporations like Scott Bader here and GSK Logistics to make sure that they are also using their apprenticeship levy to train and upskill their workforce. We also want to reevaluate the way that schools are evaluated and analysed. We want to make sure that not only the Ofsted now report card, but we also want to make sure that schools are recorded and put against whether they employ people into the local area. So it's not just about how many children they get into universities, but it's how many children go on to technical colleges, as well as how many children go on to apprenticeships. We want to work, I personally here at a local level want to work with Tresham and Mark College to all of our sixth forms. I've been doing a tour of all the sixth forms to help children get into politics and to help make them more politically engaged, but also let them know about what opportunities there are in my office should I become an MP. We also have a new deal for working people which ends via new hire. It also helps people to be upskilled, and we also want to make sure that we now class people as workers, so there's very little 0 hours contract. That's actually something we're against. We want to make sure that people that are on 0 hours contracts are now reclassified as workers, so they gain the same benefits as people that are employed by a normal company, let's say.
As you can imagine, the Green Party have a number of ideas in this area, and it's one area that James has been working on, which I commend, in terms of promoting sustainable tourism. And there's a sort of lot of sneering about Northamptonshire that can't do tourism. Actually, I think we've got some really beautiful locations that we can do this and create jobs in tourism, conservation, heritage management. Beyond that, the Green Party is big on localism, as you can imagine. We want to support small businesses and startups, provide incentives, grants, low-interest loans, and so forth. In terms of also the circular economy initiatives, promoting circular economy principles, recycling, repurposing. This can create jobs in these sort of areas. And also, obviously, we're quite big on lifelong learning. We want to sort of copy the Finnish model of education, which is free, lifelong learning, and it gets great results compared to the UK. So yeah, there's a range of policies that we want to do to get the high school jobs we need.
Thank you. So the last scripted question is from Mike Annabelle. He asks, if elected, would you make sure that single-sex services, such as hospital accommodation and sports for women and girls, are provided on the basis of sex and not self-identified gender and is subsidiary? And will you make sure that the findings of the CAS review on the treatment of gender questioning children are followed up?
Thank you. So as the Labour Party, we are committed to single-sex spaces. For things like sport, actually it'd be up to the sporting industry to make sure and to ensure that there is fair competition between competitors. But we really want to make sure that everyone is treated with respect and dignity. We don't want anyone to feel like there isn't space open for them.
Yeah, I think on this issue, I was reading a poll yesterday where the one issue that people thought we were talking far too much about was issues like this, which really seem to be almost, fringe culture war stuff to encourage, fear about trans people. Trans people make up 0.5% of the population. I think gender kind of colour, there's already protections in the Equality Act for sporting bodies and so forth, which I agree with, because I don't think, frankly, that just suppressing testosterone and so forth is going to resolve that with things like women's sport. But we need to be careful with this stuff. There seems to be almost a moral panic around it. It's getting to the stage where you're always talking about policing, changing rooms. Anyone who doesn't fit a particular ideal is going to be in trouble. If you're a woman who doesn't particularly fit a feminine ideal, you're going to be sort of accused and turfed out, women's changing room and so forth. That seems to me to be a bit odd. It just seems to be, as I say, takes up a lot of bandwidth, and it kind of, you think back and all the same sort of terminology used for gay and lesbian people in the past. A lot of fear around, indoctrinating children and so forth. I don't buy into that. I think it's a bit of a moral panic, and it really needs to be, the rhetoric needs to be toned down.
Thank you. Well, again, I'll keep it brief. My answer to it is yes and yes. But the caveat I would give, I think what everybody else has said here, I wouldn't want any groups actually to be feel that they're alienated or left out. Again, poignant to me as a father, my eldest son is gay and, has faced challenges because of that. He's a hairdresser. When he came out as gay, people actually stopped using him for that reason. So I do understand, but on this particular question, my answer is yes and yes.
Okay, so we're going to allow a bit of summing up time, just short of 9 o'clock, so the candidates will have 2 minutes to sum up each. But we're going to open the floor up now, so please raise your hand if you've got a question that's maybe arisen or a subsidiary. There's a couple of people there.
Can I just make clear, if you're asking a question, you're asking it to all the candidates on the panel. Okay.
Julia in the green.
Thank you so much. Can you use the microphone, please? I will, yes, but
I'm very capable of being extremely loud. Right. At the end of November 2023, our current Prime Minister pledged to Philip Hollybone that spades would be in the ground by the spring of 2024 at KGH to improve hospital provision for Northants. This is yet to happen. Are we ever going to see an improvement in hospital provision in this county?
Well, again, I go back to what I said earlier about national health generally. Yes, the Tories promised a lot, promised to build houses, that didn't happen. I know Labour have made some bold claims and, to be fair to them, given their opportunity, let's see. But, it goes back to that thing. We do need a different conversation and a grown-up conversation about how much money we need to spend and what we need to do. We do need a better national health service. And I would actually even go a step further and say, regarding national health, I think that if you ask most people, they will all say that and I find it a bit disingenuous that parties won't come out and admit it. I actually think the great British people, if you said, could you put your hand in your pocket and pay a bit more tax for a decent national health service, I'm sure they would. So that would be my suggestion to get things going on that front. We've got to face facts. If we want to get hospitals built, we want to keep up, that's what we're going to have to do. So yeah, I feel exactly hurt, but you know, we've got to be honest and say that if we're going to improve the national health system, I do think we have got to be prepared to invest. It's not the only thing we can do, but we have got to do it. And I think this is where the Tories are falling short. They're basically running out of money, and they just can't keep their promises. Local authorities have run out of money. You can argue as to why maybe it's been run badly, but the fact of the matter is it's not been done, and we need, I think all the parties need a serious conversation between ourselves to actually get to and come up with a national health service we can be proud of. It should not be political. It should just, it's a necessity we all need. Without our health, we have nothing. Okay.
Thank you, Julia. I'm really glad this has come up because there have been videos circulating online from Philip Holloway that the Labour Party is not committed to the capital rebuild of KGH, which is absolutely untrue. We have Rachel Reeves and Res Streeting have both given commitments that we have the money to do and we are committed to the capital rebuild. But I do also want to stress that we need provision here. Yes, we do need the services at Kettering General Hospital, but we do also need to make sure that we have provision here that's easy and available and that will help release pressure on our GP services, which GP practice managers and GP consultants they need here. So yes, we're committed to KGH, but we are also committed to making sure that there's access to healthcare here as well.
On this issue is what I think the upgrade at Kettering General has included in supposedly one of the 14 new hospitals. So even they were quite liberal with the truth in the first place, I wouldn't think they're going to follow through on that. I wouldn't be convinced that they will. I think on investment in hospitals, we need to level with people, but we're going to have to get it from somewhere. The Green Party position is about outlined all right. There's an enormous amount of wealth out in the country. We're asking the top richest, sort of 1%, to contribute a bit more to the common weal, and then we can fund things like this, certain new hospitals and all sorts of things that we need. I think people have to level with you on that. It's kind of the Tories for years have been saying new hospitals and so forth, and it never comes to pass. And so, yeah, they need to be held to account on these things.
Okay, so I think we've probably got time for two more quick questions and quick answers, and then we'll have a 6-minute sum up at the end.
Can I ask the candidates just to do it for 1 minute?
A lady there and a gentleman.
A lady and a gentleman.
The Migration Observatory reports that migrants contribute more in national insurance and in income tax than they take out in child benefits or tax credits. How do you intend to combat the misinformation that a small migrant minority is responsible for the UK's financial problems?
So did everyone hear that question? No. Would you like to say it again? Perhaps stand and speak.
Sorry, I said the Migrant Observatory reports that migrants contribute more in national insurance and in income tax than they take out in child benefits or tax credits. How do you intend to combat misinformation that blames a small migrant minority for the UK's financial problems?
I think the Green Party has a very clear position on this. As you say, I think Holiday made the point in one of the TV debates that migrants are much more likely to be sort of helping you and doing healthcare in the NHS than to be ahead of you in the queue. So we need to stop speculating with migrants. I think it's over the years, you know, they've been a younger demographic, and it's absurd to turn around and blame them essentially for the lack of investment that we've made in the country over the years. And that's what it seems to be for me. I mean, personally, I think, you know, talked about, migration, we need to build a home every 2 minutes to accommodate people. I mean, that's only 250,000 homes a year. I mean, once upon a time we used to do that before Mrs. Thatcher. It can be done. We should stop scapegoating migrants. But there is a question over how many it could be. But stop the scapegoating.
Thank you. I think for us as a party, in fact, actually part of that question should be directed to us, no longer here, unfortunately. But we need to make sure that as we're accommodating migrants to help into our NHS and to help build and be part of the economy, that we're also building the infrastructure needed to accommodate more people in the country. We also need to be giving more people the national insurance numbers quicker so they can contribute to the economy earlier. At the moment, we have 53,000 people in a backlog, which we just don't know. What I would want to see is a national insurance number given out quickly, and if we aren't able to give them a national insurance number for various reasons, they're actually resettled back to a safe country. I think for us, we want to make sure that we have a good, productive workforce, that we're growing the economy, and that we're doing that with the help of migrants as well as with our national protection too.
Thank you. Well, I certainly wouldn't blame migrants for all our ills at all, although the SDP are for keeping immigration at a reasonable level. Our aim is to get it down. I know the Labour Party doesn't like really actually giving figures, but our figure that we're saying is we would like to get it down to a manageable amount of 50,000 and then see how we go with that. For sure. I mean, on a local level, I said I've got businesses and worked in Wellingborough and the surrounding areas all my life, and I've worked alongside immigrants to this country, and my own experience is a very positive one of them, very hard-working, very family-orientated. So I certainly wouldn't. But the thing is, with immigration, we do have to not be afraid to talk. I do actually get fed up with people. Immediately you start and talk about immigration. In parties like us, the racism thing comes into it. It's just not true. It's like one on one table, one on the other. We do need a grown-up conversation about immigration. It's not, my idea about ideals or racism. It literally is about infrastructure. And so that's my only point on it, really. We do have to keep it in check. We can't get to see a doctor at a local surgeries, and things like that. I mean, all of that is, and again, please don't get me wrong. I mean, if it wasn't for immigration, I wouldn't have my wife. I did say that at the start. So I am in agreement with that. Sorry.
Okay, gentleman at the back.
Thank you. What can each of you say to me to convince me that you're being an MP in my mind is a full-time job while you're elected? What could you say to me to convince me that that is the case in your mind? Because it strikes me, I'll be honest, I've been sitting here Googling all of you. Unfortunately, Mr. Habib isn't here, but it strikes me that a lot of people have far bigger outside jobs. So how would you reconcile the fact that if you've got outside interests with other business commitments, that won't influence your viewpoint? Because obviously we've seen an awful lot in the last couple of years where people have been basically feeding contracts to friends of friends in the Old Boys network. So how would you reconcile external influences with your own personal views as an MP for me as a constituent?
Great question, sir. So are you going to be our MP first?
Yes, I know that. Well, I mean, for me personally, I can assure you won't have that problem. I'm very, very much a working class person. I don't have massive business interests. And so, for me, you don't have to worry about that on my side. If you Google me, you'll find that out. I am just sort of, if I was an MP, I'd be on much more money than I actually earn now per annum, so I'd be very happy with that, thank you very much. But one thing is for sure, for that money, I promise you get my heart and soul as a local resident and someone that has lived in this area, was born in this area, raised a family in this area, and my heart and soul is with you, and I would take that to Parliament for you, so thank you.
Having been an MP for over 100 days. It's a full-time job, and I can't fathom how you'd have other interests on it. A bit like Jeremy said, actually, this is the most amount of money I've ever been on. And for me, when I was working as a charity fundraiser, I was under the acute impression that people would, throw themselves out of planes for my salary. They would run 26 miles for what I was able to do. And I take that kind of view into Parliament with me, and that actually it's not my money I'm spending, it's yours, and therefore I want to make sure that the taxpayers get the best value for money. So no other jobs from me.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm in full agreement as well that it's a full-time job. I think there's a real issue with what you described in Parliament, second jobs, and also the revolving door where people leave ministry and then they go off and advise the companies and so forth that they've been sort of meant to be regulating. So I think that's a massive issue. It should be a full-time job. That's what I'm going to say on that.
We'll take a final question.
It'll be brief.
Really brief answers. Thank you.
Since the end of the last war, we've had Labour governments and Tory governments, a continuous cycle of Labour and Tory governments, which I think is kept in place by the first past the post system. Do the candidates think it's time that we should have a different electoral system, i.e. PR, and what are their views? Thank you.
Well, you can expect what the Green Party position is. We've been long-term supporters of proportional representation. You just look at the polling at the moment. The Green Party is on 7% to get 4 seats. Reform is on about 17% and forecast to get very few. I just think now, especially the class structure of our country has changed down the years to the point we've got different parties ultimately represent different interests, and we've got it's more divided. So the old two-party system just doesn't work. And the Green Party have other reforms as well around direct democracy and referendums and so forth, which I think we need as well. You need to be able to veto things sometimes that you don't like. So there's a whole host of democratic reforms that the Green Party support, but yes, the answer to the question is we support proportional representation.
PR is such an interesting question because there are many different types of PR. In fact, we already had a referendum alternative vote. There's so many different types. Are you advocating STV, list system, mixed member representation? One of the things that I like about First Past the Post is that there is a direct link. We are, as MPs, we are directly elected by you to make sure that we represent this area. On most forms of PR, you'd have to have an entire integral constituency that's much larger, and you lose that direct democracy because you then have a list system where someone comes to you with, say, a housing issue, and I say, did you vote Labour? Oh no, well then go to your Green, or go to your SDP, or go to your Reform. Actually, First Past the Post gives you that direct link. The Labour Party is in favour of laws reform and democratic reform. Personally, I prefer a mixed member system where you have partly elected through First Past the Post and then partly elected list system in the second chamber. But I could bore you all day about election systems, and I think I've had time.
Thank you. Again, probably won't surprise you being one of the smaller parties. I agree with Paul on this with proportional representation. But I do think it's high time we did. I mean, we're just not. I think a lot of us out there, this thing that comes to me most, that people are just not bothering to vote anymore because they're sick and tired of the two parties on offer. Comments are outdated, don't understand that kind of thing. And I mean, the only way, if there was
We've worn it out, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, where was I? Yeah, I mean, I do think as well, proportional representation would actually, it would actually ignite an interest in younger people, I feel more. Again, I hear from younger people, what's the point in voting? There's no one there that really represents me. And I can take this to one extreme as well. I mean, we do hear a lot about the protests and the Stonehenge thing and stuff like that. Well, you know, maybe if young people actually felt that they had views and they could voice them and they stood a chance, at least, of getting someone into Parliament, well, you know, instead of demonstrating, they might actually get their weight behind it. That's my point. Thank you.
So I'm really sorry, we've got no more time for questions, but that doesn't stop you approaching one of the candidates in a respectful manner if you have something to ask them. I'd like to thank you for attending this evening, and thank you for listening and responding with respect and kindness, even when we disagree with one another. And I'm going to give the three candidates remaining 2 minutes just to sum up why they would like to be our next MP.
Thank you very much. My sort of summing up would be re-emphasise as a point the gentleman made at the end of PR, is that how has tactical voting been working out for people over the years? You keep voting for the things you don't want. I'm afraid don't be surprised if you get what you don't want. I think the enormous crisis we face as a country on a global level means we haven't really got time to be waiting around for tactical voting to slightly tilt the window of opinion in a certain way. I think people need to vote for what they actually want. If you like what the Green Prospectus is, go for it. If you don't like it, don't vote for it. And you can take a fairly straightforward view on that. And so if you like what we have to say, please don't do tactical voting. We've been doing that in this country for a long, long time. And it doesn't seem to, people seem very upset when they're not getting the things that they actually want. And so, you know, please vote for what you do want. Above all, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for coming out tonight. Thank you very much for participating. It's almost 9 o'clock, so I hope you have your dinners ready when you get home, because I know I will be. It has been a privilege to be your MP for 100 days. It's been a privilege of a lifetime. The amount of people that I've been able to speak to, the amount of businesses that I've been able to help, the amount of casework that we've been able to get through. We've got people boilers that haven't been able to get boilers. We've got people legal aid when they've not been able to get legal aid, and we've been able to work with and for the community. I have been delighted to be your MP, and I have relished the opportunity to be back out on the door knocking during this election. I have enjoyed coming to so many people's houses, making sure they sign my urgent care centre petition, which I will plug again, and please do sign it. And I have been delighted to work with so many people from the community. I will say it again, it has been a privilege of a lifetime, and I'm so thankful that you found your trust in me at the by-election. Now, to say that, we won this constituency as a Labour Party in 1997 with 187 votes. My year at school was 207 people. If we're looking at a similar swing as we are in 1997, and we are, if my entire school year didn't vote, we wouldn't get a Labour government, and we wouldn't get a Labour MP here. So I'm not taking any chances. I am not complacent. I'm not thinking that I'm going to walk this. I'm working hard, and for the 100 days that I was your MP, I was solely focused on delivering the pledges that you elected me on, and I will continue to deliver those pledges. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and thank you for listening to what I've had to say tonight, and probably learning a little bit more about the SDP party. As I said, I understand we're a smaller party, but I do urge you to check this out at sdp.org.uk and see if you like our policies. What you would get from me if you were to vote for me and I was successful, as I've said to you, I'm a local guy. I was born at Hospital in 1963. I've lived and breathed and worked and raised a family in the area, and I know the people so well, and I am passionate, and I would carry that passion to Parliament. What I would say is, it does seem quite, fair to say that the Labour Party will probably win, and they could probably win with a pretty large majority. And I understand we need change. That's absolutely fair. I totally agree. The Tories are toast, as they say. And for good reason. They have let us, the majority of us, down over 14 years. I I would wish the Labour government well, and I'd like to work with them, you know, if we could. So that's fine. But what I would say, a large majority as well in this country that they could have is not a healthy thing as well. So I think the real political story won't be that Labour win the election. It will be what do we do afterwards. You know, we talked about proportional representation earlier. I think, in actual fact, the way the Tories are, they'll be voting for that as well in the next election. But you know, we really do need to sort of think. We do need a strong opposition. I think in some ways it is quite a healthy thing. I think people will go away. They will maybe look at parties like the Greens, like the SDP, and see what we do offer. And I really do urge you to check out our policies. I know we're not that well known. As I said, we're an upcoming party. We relaunched in 2018. We had 100 members there. We're now at 1,000, so we're fielding 122 candidates. Thank you for listening to me tonight.
I'd like to thank the candidates. I'd like to thank you for coming. I'd like to thank the Eco Group and Glamis Hall for putting this on, because it wouldn't have happened without them. Just give them a round of applause. Thank you. Good night. God bless.
We will need to pack up quite quickly. And it would be good if you fancy helping us pack away a few chairs. I don't know if the candidates will be hanging around for a little bit, but so you might want to have a quick question or a quick chat with them. But it's lovely to see you all, and have a good rest of the week. And remember to vote next week.